Welcome to Top M&A Entrepreneurs, the place where you can create your SMB acquisition engine. Today, my guest and my friend from Tucson, Arizona, Spartan Armor System, Todd Meeks. Todd's got a pretty interesting career. Used to be a business broker, bought a business. So we're going to talk about that and how that transpired and how it's going. Welcome to the show, Todd.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me on tonight. So I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
All right, let's go back. Tell me a little bit about your broker days and how that was going. And did you always intend to buy a business, or what was the broker part?
Yeah, so the broker part probably was the worst time to become a business broker, which was 2008 during the financial crisis. Before that, I worked for my stepfather, and he had the area development rights for the UPS store franchise. And so I worked with him in developing UPS stores, and those would come up for sale every so often. Actually quite a bit. And so since it was such a well-known brand, I was selling UPS stores, existing UPS store franchises for him, along with doing support and other things. And he ended up retiring and selling his development rights back to UPS. And I was looking for something to do. And I knew I had that kind of database of UPS store franchises that I could pull from and list UPS store franchises. And so that's kind of where the business brokering came in. I knew I had kind of some easy access to UPS store franchise owners. And so started initially just listing existing UPS store franchises. And then I ventured out to, a lot of Main Street type businesses here in Tucson and Arizona.
Yeah, so Tucson doesn't have a lot of business brokerages, that does it? Like 5 or 6 maybe at the most?
Yeah, there's only a few. So it was a kind of captive market, and back during that time, a lot of the businesses that were coming for sale were businesses that were struggling. And so, they're selling for all the wrong reasons. You get their finances and their P&Ls and balance sheets, and they were just pretty much terrible. And so it was really hard to kind of tell people that they needed to get those financials cleaned up and try to figure out how to turn around the business. But it was a struggle at the time. And then obviously financing had dried up. There was no SBA loans at all. SBA loans were not even an option. So it was all seller financing. And we would normally recommend at least 50% down with maybe 50% seller financing and kind of like, these days, I think there's probably a little more seller financing just because rates are a little high.
Yeah, they're 10%. We see what Jerome Powell does. He seems to be stuck on interest rates. I
Yeah,
don't
and,
know
and
why. It's
just
like,
to give you an idea, I mean, in 2012, I bought another UPS store and was able to finally they were issuing SBA loans again, and that was 4.5%, I think, at the time. And so, and then when I bought this company, it was same thing, about 4.5, 4.55% on an SBA loan. So it was, a good time to kind of buy businesses back then when the rates were low.
yeah, crikey. Yeah. So, how long did you go? I think you said I don't know if you want to say it, Tucson Business Investments, the big one here in town. That's who
Yep,
you went to
yep.
work for. How long did you work for them as a broker?
So I worked for them for 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
And the reason why I became there was that backstory of me having access to UPS store franchise owners that wanted to sell their business. But another thing I think we may have talked about before is I got the idea of becoming a business broker from the gentleman that founded Mailboxes, etc. And he actually didn't find it, but his name was Tony DeCio. And he was out in Southern California, and there was a little Mailboxes, etc. store in Southern California, and he was looking for a business. He became a business broker, kind of like I did, to find deals, to find a business that we could possibly scale. And he found a little mailbox store that was renting mailboxes and shipping packages and doing Western Union and all kinds of little different things back in like 1980, 81. And he was able to scale it from there, took mailboxes, et cetera, and it became a franchise. He didn't have a lot of backing from venture capital or private equity. And so some franchises that don't get that investment from private equity were able to kind of section off different areas of the country and allow investment in the company as area franchisees. And so that's what my stepfather did at the time. He opened up the first mailbox, et cetera store, and then bought the development rights soon after. And that gave him the rights to share in that royalty stream and then also get, fees for opening up the store and training new franchisees as they came on board. You know, again, I took that path. I wanted to kind of see if I could find a deal in Tucson through business brokering, and I did. I just never pulled the trigger. Nothing really jumped out. But when a new opportunity came on board, I would really take a deep dive into the financials and kind of find the background of the business to see if it was something that I myself might be able to do.
Yeah. Have to go back. That serial guide, mailbox, etc. Who did he sell that eventually to? Was it
So
FedEx or UPS? What was that?
yeah, so initially he sold it to some big private equity company that created a business called United States Office Products or something like that. It got some
Uh,
shares. It was a complete flop, and they spun it off and sold it back to UPS. So UPS acquired the mailbox, et cetera, brand and franchises and processes, and then they rebranded, I think back in 2001 to the UPS store so they could have that footprint. And they're still around today. It's still a franchise. It's a tough business because it's retail, it's brick and mortar, but they have a good name. They have a pretty big footprint and input with Amazon. I think Amazon is pushing a lot of transactions that way to kind of keep the UPS store going.
yeah, I got a question. So you will know this. So those are for sale quite often.
Yeah.
Are they good businesses to run? I know I have a suspicion they're low margin, and then your owner's probably working quite a bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I own multiple stores, and it's very hard to own multiple UPS stores. The business model is just pretty complex. The hours are, they want you to be open 7 days a week, and at least, I don't even know what it is, 60, 65 hours a week. You have to keep the store open, and it's hard to pay for good employees. So it's not like you could hire a general manager and a UPS, and a manager and assistant managers and stuff like that, kind of like some larger like franchisees where they have multiple franchisees like McDonald's or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a grind and it depends on the location. You have to have a great location. You can't have too much competition around you. And so there's a lot of factors that are involved in running that store, especially when you own multiple stores. So we started downsizing when I bought Spartan Armor Systems at 15 and started kind of selling them off. But yeah, it's a grind. I mean, it'll make you a living, if you have a decent location, but it's a grind.
Yeah. I had a friend that invested in one, and he said where the money was renting the mailboxes that came in
Exactly.
because of reoccurring revenue.
Yeah, the whole goal is to rent those mailboxes to cover your rent. And so if you could do 3, 4, $5,000 a month, you could do well. I mean, Las Vegas has done extremely well. The UPS stores there because of their incorporation laws and stuff like that and privacy laws. And so you have stores there in Las Vegas where they have 500 to 1,000 mailboxes rented or virtual mailboxes, and they're charging $25, $30 a piece. And so that's where they make the majority of their money. Where in Tucson, I mean, you could probably $3,000 to $5,000 a month is kind of the range, for an existing store,
Yeah.
uh, to build up to that point.
And it's not difficult to go buy a location and open up a store not far from a probably competitor and put boxes in.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
a
I
big
mean,
risk.
and that's it. I mean, you have a trade area where they give you, and it was usually about a mile radius. And I don't know if, I've been out of it for, 5 years now. I don't know if they even still have trade areas. They wanted to get rid of them. So you could kind of, eventually they'll open up one across the street if it justifies it. So,
Jeez. Yeah.
which is a tough deal. I mean,
Yeah.
in the franchise business, your goal is to take care of the franchisee and not, if you take care of the franchisees, everything else will come. But you don't want to a situation where you're like a Quiznos or a Dickie's Barbecue or something like that, where they structure, the head company to try to just, suck the franchisees dry. So
So before we get to Spartan Armor System and that story, I want to talk about your experiences with being a business broker and the businesses you like to sell, hated to sell, that some of the businesses that always came up for sale again and again, and the only people that make money were the broker.
right.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of my people, viewers, like the first contact they make is with a business broker and they're talking to them. So tell us a little bit about some stories about that.
Yeah, no, a lot of people that want to buy businesses, they don't want to work in them, but the business. They don't want to, grind it out 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And a lot of them want a hands-off investment. And so, some of those businesses are like laundromats and dry cleaning businesses. And so laundromats were one that, would come up for sale. And the idea of owning a laundromat is perfect. It's like, okay, you open the doors, you just collect the quarters or collect the bills from the card exchanger and deposit them, and it pretty much hands off business. And that really wasn't the case. A lot of laundromats struggle. Again, that's kind of like the UPS store. It depends on the location. You can't open up a laundromat in a high-end location. There's nice houses. Everybody already has washers and dryers. So you're putting laundromats in kind of low-end kind of
Yeah,
neighborhoods.
yeah, yeah.
And then the people that use those, they're beating up the equipment, so the equipment's beaten up. Sometimes when you bought an existing laundromat, the equipment was old and struggled to work. And so, there was lots of repair and service calls on laundromats that sucked a lot of the money out of that business. And then, at one time when I was in the business brokerage business, people had a hard time using cards with laundromats. They wanted to use quarters. And so that
Yeah.
affected the business. And you wouldn't think, you just put quarters in the machine, but when it transferred over to a little more technology where you had prepaid cards into that, it,
People that
it
are
affected
making
that
the
business too.
washing their clothes are not carrying around debit or credit cards.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And people got used to just putting quarters in the machine and they would, bring a handful of quarters and then they get there and they're like, now I got to buy this card, to put in the machine. And so yeah, I think I told you this story. We sold, one of the brokers in the office was like kind of like the laundromat sales king. And no joke, I bet you he sold one laundromat 10 times, over his 30 years of doing it. And they would turn over every 2 to 3 years unless you had a really good location. There was a few locations in town that just did extremely well, and they were cash cows, and they met that vision that most people have when they purchase a laundromat. So if again, it just depends on the location. And then during that time, we saw a lot of the bars and restaurants, and those struggled. A lot of people have it on their bucket list to own a bar,
Yeah.
where they could just kind of go there and oversee everything. And you have bartenders and cooks and waitresses and
Drop in for a
there's
drink every now and then, kind of whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it was a bad deal, especially if you're a drinker and you're going in there and you're drinking and you're buying your friend's drink and you're buying the patrons' drinks and you're just chopping away at the margin. So,
Yeah.
independent bars and restaurants were always a tough deal to sell. So,
So
especially most banks won't finance those either. So,
yeah. So the only people that actually make money on the kind of laundromat deals is the broker. Now,
yeah,
it
no, I mean, there was kind of a minimum agreement. It was, for a broker, it was 10 grand. And so if you had a laundromat that you're selling for 50, 60, 70, $80,000, a broker was getting 10 grand. And, a lot of time, people, it was one thing or another. I mean, it could be um, the rent was going up, a lot is dependent on the rent. Sometimes the water bills and the sewer line fees would come up and, air conditionings would break down, equipment would break down. And so there was a lot of just things you don't consider that would break down. And
Yeah.
people beat up those machines. I mean, when they come in there, they're bringing their comforter and they're stuffing it. And, unless you have somebody there kind of monitoring that, they're pretty hard on that equipment. And so there's, those people that do successful, would actually fix their own equipment, became knowledgeable enough to
Yeah.
fix their own equipment. And that's defeats the purpose of owning, a hands-off laundromat is so you don't have to go in there and do that. So,
I
and,
have to
and then,
ask you about this. So if they come to you, this is about cash businesses. It's
yeah,
doing $100,000 and most of it's quarters. And somehow that quarters don't find their way into the deposits in the bank or on the tax returns,
right.
stays home and it's spent. How do you handle that when they say it did 100,000 yesterday? Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, the way that most brokers handle that is like if you're seriously going down that path and you're looking at the books, we just suggest have a meeting with the owner and discuss that. I would tell owners that, the way that you sell a business is by your financials, and you need to have clean financials. So at least 3 years before you're thinking about selling, keep a clean set of books. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people are set in their ways and they were skimming or whatever you want to call it from that. And I would tell them that, that they were, kind of getting paid already, the amount that they wanted because they had skimmed them money from the get-go. So,
yeah,
but yeah, there was owners that would have two sets of books. They would have one that was real and for the IRS, and then they would have, or for them, and then one for the IRS. I would stay out of that. I would not even do that. But I would question somebody's integrity about doing that and buying a business from an individual like that, just because you truly don't know what you're getting, unless you're out in front in the parking lot and you're counting the number of cars and people coming in and out
and the
and
loads of
try to,
laundry they're doing, and exactly to
yeah,
5%.
try to backtrack into a number or something like that. So yeah, it's a tough deal.
Yeah. And what other business did you like selling that you?
Anything that was kind of service based were good. I mean, accounting practices and stuff like that. You're going to have good books because obviously CPA is an accountant, and so those were a little tougher to sell. Manufacturing companies
Yeah,
were good. There's a company called Tucson Store Fixtures, which was kind of interesting that had been around for a while, and they provided fixtures for retail, just something unique in a captive market. But I think what happened over time with them is a lot of the fixtures and stuff became available online and
yeah.
shipped directly and stuff like that. But yeah, there was businesses like that and lots of franchise businesses, and they kind of a lot of them struggled. Some of the franchise businesses, whether they were like smoothie shops,
Yeah, what do
Robex.
you think of those businesses, those specific smoothie shop type deals where they're now
Yeah,
like $13
it's a
a
it it
smoothie?
it's a grind. I mean, I saw some numbers, from Jamba Juice and Robex, and there was one that was owned by an individual that was like the director of marketing for Peter Piper Pizza, and he wanted to kind of venture into his own thing and created this just really extensive marketing plan, and this guy couldn't even make it work. Again, it was he did his due diligence on the location, um, but he started it new, and so. I really highly recommend not starting something from new because, in the restaurant industry, the busiest day that you'll have normally is your first week because people want to
Yeah.
try it out, then it'll die down. Uh, and that's what happened to this guy. This guy did a huge grand opening promotion and was giving away smoothies, and then that was it. I mean, it was just so usually when I would tell prospects, I would say buy an existing business. I mean, buy an existing franchise. You already have the traction, you have the numbers, you could improve upon the customer service, your the process is there, the marketing, and grow it from there. Because that was my business model when I bought UPS stores. I never opened up a new location, just because I knew it would take 18 to 24 months to get it to a point where it was breaking even, which is a grind. I mean, it hurts, opening up a business and end up putting a couple thousand, $2,000, $3,000 a month, or some people even put more than that into a business initially before they break even. And you think you're going to open and people are just lined up to, to give you money, but that's not the case.
Yeah, that's not the case. So how long was it before you came across this Spartan Armor Systems? What did that look like?
So yeah, I was still doing business brokering. I was just finishing up a few deals. I had like a post-net franchise that I was in escrow selling right before I closed on Spartan Armor Systems, and I had a couple restaurants that I was selling here in Tucson. And it was in 2015 that Spartan Armor Systems came into and the owner of the company was working with my best friend and college roommate at the time. And my college roommate was spraying, he owned a Rhino lining dealership
Yeah.
here in Tucson, spraying truck liners. And he started spraying torso plates, body armor, steel plates for the founder of Spartan Armor Systems. This guy had been doing it for 3 years and started it, back in 2012, and worked for the Border Patrol and was
Wait a minute, he was a
pretty
full-time employee at the Border Patrol?
full-time employee at the Border Patrol, would start his Border Patrol gig at 6 in the morning and get off at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and then run around and get supplies for Spartan Armor Systems and take everything back to his house and get it wrapped up or cut or bent or whatever he was doing, and then work through the night to get everything wrapped up and to the post office in Vail, Arizona, the next morning. And so,
Yeah.
but
Did he have a website or anything, or what was he
he had
doing
a
for sales?
website. Yeah, initially he was selling everything on eBay. So was selling probably 75% on eBay at the time. Just took a huge leap of faith in starting a website back in, I think, 2012, 2013. Just an old WooCommerce website hosted by GoDaddy. That became about 25% of the business, and it just started blowing up. So I think the first year he did a couple 100,000. The second year he did, 500,000 in top line revenue. And then, I think when I bought it, he was probably going to do, $800,000 in
Yeah.
sales.
Was it profitable sales too?
Very profitable.
Very
Very.
profitable.
He was doing everything. So he didn't have any rent. Found out he didn't have any business liability insurance. His customer service line was his personal cell phone, paying a couple guys under the table, but he was doing pretty much $800,000 all by himself.
Wow.
And so
But
so lot
grinding, he's definitely grinding hard. A full-time job and doing this, yeah.
Yeah. So again, there was little payroll expenses or insurance or overhead expenses. It was mostly just cost of goods. And so that money was dropping to the bottom line. And he got to the point where he was either going to have to quit his job with the Border Patrol. And he had 15 years in and didn't want to give up that pension at the time, or turn it over to somebody else to run and be an absentee owner. And he was he was a kind of a micromanager. So he didn't want to turn anything over. And so he had mentioned about selling to my partner at the time. And my partner was going through a divorce. And so he didn't have the means to invest in the business. And he brought it to my attention, knew that I was looking for something. And yeah, we kind of backtracked into a number and made the deal work. It took about 6 months from the initial meeting.
Yeah. So did you start with the phone call first and a meeting? Like how many kind of meetings face to face did you have with this guy?
Yeah, it was kind of a phone call first and then a meeting. Again, he didn't have a clean set of books, which is always a no-no. So the way that I validated that was his biggest competitor was up in Phoenix, and he was just killing it. I mean, at the time, I think this guy had 50 employees, 10,000 square foot facility, and Spartan Armor Systems was number two in that with just one person. And so I'm like, if this guy is doing 800,000 with himself and two employees that he's paying under the table, and this guy up in Phoenix has 50 employees, imagine what that guy's top line revenue is.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was probably 10, $15 million. And so I knew that if the if we jumped all in and we took it and tried to grow it as a real business, there was an opportunity there. So, and fortunately, for me, I was right. My wife thought I was crazy.
Yeah, let me ask you about that with your wife. All of
Yeah.
this rationalizing is going through your head, like you can make it work, the numbers are there, but they're not there. And do you have to kind of do a board meeting with your wife and say, "Hey, I'd like to buy this business," and how that goes? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing was like, what do you know about the body armor business? And so I'm like, I
Zero.
know, no, I know zero, but I know, I know a good opportunity when I see one.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was tough because when you get an SBA loan, they're gonna wrap their arms around everything you own. So, they leveraged my UPS stores, they leveraged my house. I mean, it was all in, and I was 46 at the time, and I'm like, man, this is kind of, I was thinking in the back of my mind, this was my last hurrah. I needed to do something to see if I could do it. And so, she's like, I know you're not going to take no for an answer. So, and she's obviously happy that things worked out the way that they did. And we refinanced that SBA loan about 5 years into it. So we got our house and our stores off the back end of that SBA loan. But yeah, it
Well,
was
they
a
were all
grind at
attached to
first.
that personal guarantee and
I'm sorry, what's that?
they were all those assets were attached to that personal guarantee then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cash and personal guarantee. I mean, the one thing, the UPS store was a grind and a franchise, but that gave me the credibility to show. It was Chase Bank at the time, and they had all their regional managers and district managers coming to my UPS store and seeing how we were running our UPS store. Because at that time, they wanted to validate that you knew what you were doing and that you were a business owner and operator and stuff like that. And so um, so you have to kind of, pitch yourself and what you've done over the last year. Because if this was 20 years before, I probably would never have got that loan because I would have never got that credibility.
Let me ask you about how you arrived at the price. He thinks it's worth something, but in your head, like, okay, there's no systems in place, there's no employees, he's all doing it. I don't know really what the number is. Were you guys close? Were you he lower than yours, higher than his, or what? How did that dance go?
Yeah, I mean, we negotiated down from what he wanted originally,
Uh,
but it was again, there was so much unknown. Like the whole, you don't have any business liability insurance.
so
I
for
didn't,
a
we
body
didn't.
armor system, no liability insurance. That sounds like trouble.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the body armor industry. I mean, and it's a big number what we pay in liability insurance, and there was no workers' comp, and there was no health care for employees, and there's no phone, there's no electric, no nothing. And so, the only thing that we struggled over was the inventory, and what was happening was he was running down the inventory very low, and he wasn't replacing it. And so we had a big blowout, a few weeks before the closing. And I'm like, you're not leaving me with anything. He's like, oh, I just put an order in for this. And the inventory was like 40 or $50,000, which, just to give you an idea now, my inventory is over 1 million. And that's what we need to fulfill orders in a, you know, a quick manner. But yeah, I got two times his net
Net, whatever
profits.
that was.
Yeah.
Did he turn over his bank account statements and say, "Here's what I'm making," or did he?
So what he gave me, I didn't get bank accounts, and I probably should have, but what he gave me was, his e-commerce
Yeah,
website data, which it's hard to manipulate that data, his eBay sales data, and then he gave me his personal tax return for the last 3 years because everything was on his Schedule C, where he broke down all his cost of goods sold and expenses.
yeah,
And so, and then we backtracked. So all those plates that he was selling, which was probably about 75 to 80% of the business, were these plates that he was selling. And so my partner at the time was able to give me a number because he was invoicing. Jeremy was the founder. of the company. He was invoicing Jeremy for all these plates that he was spraying. So we were able to go back through those invoices and say, okay, he did spray 10,000 plates or sold 10,000 plates. And so we kind of, verified it that way that he was doing,
And
eight,
then you
900.
look at the dates and the last time he ordered. So it was kind of some
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
You guys arrive at a price 2x. Now, did you have to go borrow the money to purchase this from the SBA loan for this? And
yeah.
I guess the question is like, okay, he doesn't have clean books, and their SBA is going to do some underwriting. They do their own digging. What
Right.
was
Right.
how did that go? I mean, did you guys have a quality of earnings or an accountant look at this stuff before you?
Yeah, I didn't have attorneys or accountants look at it. I probably should have. Again, I think the bank at the time took what was being offered from the Schedule C and said, okay, he did do this, and they took all the numbers, the same numbers that I had. I had my UPS stores. I didn't have the money up front to come up because I had to come up with 10% of the deal.
Yeah,
And so my partner at the time had borrowed some money from his father. And then I came up with $50,000. I had a line of credit of 100,000 that was tied to my UPS store. And so I took $50,000 that line of credit for the UPS store to do that. I stretch that because you got to remember we're coming off, yeah, the financial crisis was in '08, but it dragged on for 3 or 4 years and nothing was happening. And my UPS stores were just covering my living expenses.
I mean, like literally, I'm envisioning you at a poker table handing out IOUs, and then
Right,
just
right,
going, "I'm all in."
right, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was that line of credit we pulled from. And then, it was kind of a tough situation because right off the bat, when we did close and we did, take over the company, um, we had $100,000 line of credit that Chase gave us, or it didn't, that authorized us to use, and we were tapping into that from, day one almost, as far as working capital because we
Yeah,
needed inventory and we did we had $40,000-$50,000 of inventory that was transferred over to us, but it was a tough grind. And then at the time PayPal froze our say we couldn't pull any money out of PayPal, and half the money was coming in through PayPal. And so it took us it because we were a new company and they wanted to make sure it wasn't a fraudulent company that was just collecting some scam payments. And so PayPal did not release our money for 60 to 90 days at the time. They had $100,000, I think, that's just sitting there and I couldn't get to. So it was a tough deal.
just one of the stresses that an entrepreneur goes through.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about working capital. Did you get it right? Did you estimate it? Earlier said, "Hey, you're leaving me with no inventory and the working capital to turn assets into cash flow." Did you get it right? Were you off, or
Yeah, no, I was off. So this business everybody had a lead time. I mean, and the lead times were just outrageous, 4, 8, 12-week lead times. So people would put an order in through the website or through eBay, and it would take, 6, 8, 12 weeks to fulfill. And I'm like, why is this taking so long? And it was because of inventory, and because there was no vertical integration. It was super inefficient how things were being run. And so it took 12 weeks sometimes to get people their products and that was all a direct from, the inventory that you have to carry. You have to have, your raw materials and your finished goods. You have to have a lot on hand to fulfill those orders in a timely manner. And
yeah,
so
and that
that's where I
doesn't
came.
happen today. Like you just fulfill orders within a less than a week.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine? I mean, that's kind of we really pushed on getting orders out within a couple days. And we after 10 years, we finally got to that point. But that's what a lot of people became expected to because of Amazon. Amazon was doing the whole Prime thing and pushing orders out really quick, and so we had to, kind of meet those expectations.
Yeah. How many times the deal almost blow up?
Oh man, probably three times. That inventory thing was pretty quick. The financing, the SBA loan, the seller, once they get a deal, they get a contract in place, they want out, and so, the bank's telling you, oh, we can get this done in 60 to 90 days. And it took 6 months. And, it took 6 months for me knowing what I'm, having, got an SBA loan before. And so I was on them, the numbers that they were requesting, I was getting them to them quick, and it took 6 months. And so, time kills
Six
deal.
months for an SBA loan. Yeah.
Yeah. 6 months,
But
six
this is
months.
after not long after 2000.
Yeah. Yeah. This was, March of 2015,
Oh,
you know?
2015. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So, but it was a few years, but yeah, it took 6 months. I mean, it was, and I could not, and this was JP Morgan Chase Bank. I mean, I couldn't have pushed anything any faster. I mean, I was getting them the information that they needed as fast as I could. And it was still a grind. There was no hurry on their part. So, and that was a tough deal. So,
is that a mark on JP Morgan at that time saying I'm not going to do with these guys again? Or was
yeah, I
it they're
mean,
too busy
I
or what it
tried.
was?
During
Yeah.
my partnership buyout, I got another SBA loan, and I actually went to a smaller bank here in Tucson, and they got it done in 3 months. And
Oh, wow.
so,
Yeah.
so it just showed you JP Morgan, it's such a big bank. You're just a number. So it was a grind to get to get them to the finish line.
Yeah. Was there was there anything not true that he said was true? I mean, blatant type dishonesty with this deal?
No, I mean, I think there was just things he didn't know. So, like, one of those is the biggest question is, why is there a 12-week lead time? And he's like, well, he would blame it on, my partner, because it took so long for him to spray the plates because he was spraying trucks and spraying plates. And then that was about it. The business liability insurance I didn't know about, the workers' comp stuff. He didn't have any workers' comp because he didn't have employees that were actually on the books.
Yeah.
So those were kind of the only two things.
Yeah.
But everything else, I mean, he was an honest guy. I mean, he was a former Marine, Border Patrol. Super intelligent, young kid, at the time. I think he was in his early 30s. And our biggest competitor was about, the same age. The only difference between the two of them is they were actually bantering back and forth as far as what coating to use on the steel plates. And so early on, they were in the mix of starting this business. And so one stayed with the Border Patrol and just did it as a side gig. The other one quit his job. I think he was working for some tech company or something like that and jump full in to create the business and so scale it. And so he just figured it out early on. And so that company has since gained some traction, but we've caught up to them.
Yeah. Was there a time where you're going through this process of underwriting and they look at the cash flow and say, "Hey, no, you need to retrade it and change the price on it," or do you guys stay on the same price on all the way through?
Yeah, we pretty much stayed on the same price all the way through. There was no changes. Once we had a contract in place. And so but it may have fluctuated, when we first were interested, maybe 10-15% from what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you know that this was going to happen? I mean, the 6 months is a long time to sit there and twiddle your thumbs and work on like wait for JP Morgan. Did you
Yeah.
get the SBA, the number and say, "Hey, we'll do the deal"? And when did you feel like it was ready to go?
Yeah. I mean, so mid-July about 10 years ago, the founder, the company was confident that it was going to close. I was confident. And so I kind of worked with him for a couple weeks because he had a couple weeks off from the Border Patrol and kind of learned the business, at least how he was running it. We were going to run it completely different, but just to see what it was all about because he was doing everything. I mean, he had an old plasma table in his garage that he acquired from a Craigslist from a boat anchor business in Lake Havasu that went out of business. And so he was cutting the plates himself. he was bending the plates himself, and then he would take them to my partner to spray. And so I think we both had confidence that it was going to happen after that trainer or during that training period, which is kind of odd too, because normally as a broker, I wouldn't tell people to train until after you close
Yeah.
because, you saw what I saw 3 months before. It was like, oh my God, this is not what I want to do.
You
And
either
it could have
gonna,
scared me out
like,
of the deal.
yeah,
I mean, he was sweating and his shirt was just all dirty and had his little welding helmet and he was doing everything and he was packing things on the back of his truck tailgate and he had employees going around the side of his yard, relieving themselves because the wife wouldn't let him in the house. I'm like, oh man. And so I mean that right there, that should have killed the deal right there. It's like,
yeah,
what are you
yeah,
doing? So
yeah. So what did you do the first day? Like, hey, it's mine. He signed the papers and it's mine. Like, what kind of sandcastles did you have ready to go? Yeah.
Yeah, no. So we moved it out of his garage, everything, and moved it into my partner's existing business. And he had like I said, the Rhino Linings distributorship, and he had 2,400 square feet. And we kind of split that area where we had 1,200, he had 1,200, and he would spray trucks half the day and spray plates the other half of the day. And at the time, he had a girlfriend that was working within his office that was, handling his books and sales. And she came to me and she said, within a week or two of us taking over, she's like, I really want to be a part of, this business. And my wife said, don't hire her. And I hired her. And so she was nice and she helped kind of, take, take control of the business at first. And then, like anything else, kind of partnerships, it was tough and it didn't work out. I fired her and let her go 2 years into it. And, that was probably the best decision for me. But she ended up being my partner's second wife, and they ended up, coming to me and asking me to buy them out pretty early on. So about 2 years into once we took over.
Yeah. Why did they want to sell? I gotta have to ask you, is this the guy, the Rhino Linings, and now
Yeah,
it's a pretty big company? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he just had an individual location as far as the
Okay.
Rhino linings, and
Yeah.
so he was just spraying plates here locally, and it was kind of like a franchise.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I got.
And so she was just a very strong woman. She felt that she had done everything to contribute to the success, or he and she did to the business at that point in time after 2 years. And they wanted to start their own business, even though they didn't come up and tell me that they were going to start their own competing business. So I fired her in October, and then about a month later, he came to me and he basically said, "Hey, my girlfriend thinks you're going to run the business into the ground, and we want you to buy us out." And so I'm like, "All right, I can't believe you want to get bought out, and things were trending great. I mean, we went from, a million in 2016. No, no, yeah, it was a million in 2015, and that was kind of what the 4 months into it, and then we went to 3.9 million in 2016 and we ended up 5.4 for 2017 and that's when he came to me in 2017 in that November where he wanted out. And so I'm like, are you serious? And they just thought they could do it better.
Yeah. And they owned what size? A minority position or what?
Yeah, so at the time, because he had bad credit, and was going through a divorce, SBA would only let him own 18% of the business
Yeah.
without a credit check or anything like that. I think that has since changed, but at the time that was good. So he owned 18%. After the loan was to be paid off, he would have got 30%. So, and it was a 7-year term SBA loan. So he had 5 more years to wait. He would have had 30%. So not only did he give up 12% equity by cashing out early? It was just a tough deal. We had a valuation done and I couldn't get him the number that he wanted on the valuations. I think, we ended up negotiating a 20% less than what the valuation said. And I'm like, that's what I could afford to pay. And I was like, take it or leave it. Eventually he took it. So
Yeah. Did he own 18% of the cash flow too that came in every month, or was it just equity and he didn't have cash flow rights? Or
yeah, it was just equity, but they were both pulling out, at the time, that she was making 75,000, he was making 75,000. So they were making more than me and I was making 75. Here I got 82% of the company and they're pulling, 150,000 out of the year and it was just a tough deal.
yeah. And you guys are still friends or not friends or
No, we're not, unfortunately.
yeah.
He went off and opened up a competing business and actually sold it last year. So he was 5 years into it. I don't know why he sold it, but our industry is going through a contraction right now because of the politics. We're kind of officially in the Trump slump, is what they call it, when a conservative is in office. People's guns and ammo and body
Yeah, yeah.
armor
They used to say
are
like
going to be taken
Obama
away.
used to be the number one salesperson for the First Amendment
Exactly, exactly.
or Second Amendment. Excuse me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what did you do when you had this like, here's what I'm going to do first? Like, and you're doing multiple things at a time to fix this business, but where did you start on first?
So we tried to, the customer service was key at first because the phone wasn't being answered. It was rolling over to voicemail. People weren't being called in. And so the customer service side of things was kind of where we would take sales calls, do quotes, and just answer the phone and answer people's questions. The second thing was to update the website. The website was a complete disaster, and so it just was a slow grind. And so it took us about 6 months to 9 months to update the website because we wanted to push those customers off of eBay because those were eBay customers. You couldn't get any,
You couldn't
you
get
know,
their contact information. You couldn't
email,
get it. Yeah,
contact
yeah,
information, and so we started, focusing on our own website and pushing people. So we started a new website, and then as far as manufacturing, we started slowly doing things in house. So our first major purchase was it was almost like a sewing machine. It's called an ultrasonic welder, where we could cover the soft armor, the Kevlar type material, in
yeah.
a waterproof fabric. And then the second big purchase which was a huge purchase at the time, was a multi-layer fabric cutter that cut that material. And so anytime there was kind of a bottleneck and where we were getting either raw materials or finished goods from, and it took forever to get it from them, I'm like, well, there must be, there must be a reason why can't we bring this in house? And so, if you come to our operations now, like you've been, there's just, we do pretty much 95% of everything in house. There's pretty limited stuff that we don't do as far as the body armor side of it in
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, but you had to get a new location because you were at your ex partner's location too. Also, you had to get a new. Yeah,
Yeah, so early on, I mean, there was a facility that came available right down the street in that same industrial complex. And again, got another SBA loan. I was loading up on SBA loans. And
yeah.
so I got an SBA loan to buy the building. That was probably, yeah, in 2016, at the end of 2016, about a year and a half, we were able to secure a location. It was 12,000 square feet. And then that location worked out really well. We're still in it. But in 2020, we had a banner year and just exploded, just over 20 million. And so added another 12,000 square feet to handle the growth. And that
Fantastic.
came about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. And the margins stay consistent over those years, or has any of that changed?
Yeah, and margins maintain, because we brought a lot of those processes in house. So we purchased a laser cutter. So we started cutting our own steel where we were outsourcing that originally. We got rid of that plasma table. So because that plasma table was just so inefficient and so messy. And so we found a company in that same industrial complex to cut our plates, but that was a cost because obviously they charged us for every
Yeah,
plate
yeah.
that they cut, and so we started cutting our own steel plates, and then we started manufacturing our own level 4 and level 3 ceramic plates. And so we brought in a piece of equipment called an autoclave to do that. And so again, there was bottlenecks with suppliers that were private labeling body armor for us and other things. And so when there was that bottleneck, we bring it in house.
Yeah. Was there anything that you look back and go, man, I wish we would have done that completely different, or do that a little bit different, or really big lessons on, what you learned from this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't have taken on a partner. I probably would have done the whole thing myself.
Yeah.
So that was one dynamic. I mean, it's so hard to get into, and I hear it all the time because a lot of people know my story. And when they go into business, they start a partnership with a friend, and sometimes it works out, but a lot of times it doesn't. And sometimes those relationships are destroyed just because you see things differently. But
Money changes people.
what's that?
Money changes people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, it does. And so communicate. I'm not the best communicator, and so communicating with, my top employees and just employees, that's not my thing. Right now I have a CEO that runs a company who has a ton of manufacturing background, has a MBA, has a mechanical engineering degree. So everything, yeah, I wish I would have found him earlier. I had been looking for somebody like him from the get go, but he's been working for me for 5 years now.
Was he in Tucson or outside Tucson?
Yeah, he was in Tucson.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He had moved here from Louisville to run another company that made medical device equipment, testing equipment.
Yeah.
And so he was just kind of, had left there and, was looking for something and met with him and, wasn't sure because it was a six-figure salary, to do that, but it made sense. I mean, it made sense because I was struggling, across the gamut. I mean, the nice thing about him is he was running this other company. So not only did he know, the engineering side of things, the manufacturing side of things, but he knew the finance side of things too. So he was able to come in here and clean up, our inventory management system and get that to work and put real business processes in place so things were, operating, the right way.
Yeah. Do you give out any or sell any equity to minority players like this guy?
I did give him equity. And
Yeah.
so right now he's at like 6.6% and it'll go up to 10% over the next year and a half or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, he pretty much made this company what it is. And so
Fantastic. Yeah.
I just had the ideas and the connections and the vendor relationships, and I just basically shared all those relationships with him, and he's taken it definitely to the next level.
Yeah. So what are your plans for this? Keep running this for another 5, 10 years? Or are you thinking, you know
Yeah,
what, I may sell?
being a business broker, for 10 years, anything's for sale. And
At
so
the right price. Yeah.
at the right price. But the one thing I do know is we've trended down since 2020. We were able to stabilize over the last 2-3 years, our sales, but want to kind of get it on an uptrend again. And
You need a
so
new administration, a Democratic administration.
right. Or just get a large government contract. And so
Yeah.
our focus has been more in local law enforcement and federal contracts and stuff like that. So we're trying to make some inroads there. A lot of the larger companies in that space kind of have a lock on that, but we're just going to stay consistent and do what we do best and keep innovating and providing, product, quickly in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Right now I come into the office, but again, I'm not truly involved in the day-to-day operations. And so, yeah, we'll see in 3 years. So
We'll see.
I've got 3 years left in me, one way
Yeah.
or another, I think.
All right. Todd Meeks, thank you for sharing your story. Really, really, really appreciate this.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on.
All right.